Welcome to the Cross the Line Podcast. My name is Carlos Smith, and today I have another very special guest with me once again. I like to call this gentleman a friend, a mentor. We go way back to ESPN Upstate at Intercom Radio in Greenville, South Carolina.
Sir.
He is the host of Double Dribble here in Fox Sports in Spartanburg, Monday nights from 6 to 8. Right now, I have Mr. Ken Blankenship, and also known as KB. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Los. Thanks for having me.
Always, man. It's always good to stay connected with you. You know, I see you sometimes when you come in while I'm working or whatever. I make sure I stop, talk to you. But it's always good to, stay connected. Like I said, we met. This was probably about 6-7 years ago now. Yep, ESPN Upstate, Intercom Radio in Greenville. And I was actually just a producer back then. So I remember just running the board, watching you. You were on the show with G-Mac and Lonzo. And so I would always get a chance to just sit in. And you always embrace me. You would make conversation with me during commercial breaks, ask me how old I was or where I was from and everything like that. But you always embrace me, and I always appreciated it. So thank you for joining me again on my platform, the Cross the Line Podcast. But
absolutely, glad to do it.
And man, it's good. And I know you're a big sports guy. Definitely like to talk about hoops. So we're going to talk about a lot of stuff that's going on in the NBA. But
that's right.
Just starting out though, for people just rewinders, this may be their first time seeing you on air. They might have heard you on radio, but this time before. But just talk a little bit about your backstory. Are you born and raised in this area?
Actually born and raised in a small town in South Carolina called Lake City. It's about 23 miles from Florence and about 60 miles from Myrtle Beach. But moved here to Spartanburg in the third grade, January of, I guess I'll date myself if I say it, but I don't care. I'm the old man, so I'll get that out right out front. But January of 1969, moved here. And have been here ever since. Moved away a couple of times. Moved to Atlanta in 87 for a couple of years, and then to Charlotte in 89 for a couple more years, and then came back here, I think it was 91. And and I've basically been back ever since. And absolutely love Spartanburg. I think people who either grew up here or have been here long enough realize the value of this place. Sometimes it's hard to put into words, but even if you calculate it, even if you throw everything in the mix, I think that's when Spartanburg comes up big. Greenville is 30 minutes away, and I've often called Greenville the unknown jewel of this country because it's really, really smooth downtown. It's great, but there's something about Spartanburg. Spartanburg's had a tremendous amount of growth lately too, kind of as Greenville's smaller brother or whatever.
And I just saw him getting a baseball, minor league baseball team.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well.
Spartanburg's getting ready to explode. Yep. It has exploded in the last 10 to 15 years, but it's getting ready to explode exponentially. And all kind of stuff coming to town. You wouldn't believe it. And the ballpark is one of the big things that will add. Oh yeah, no doubt. That will be when you do things like that these days, you're not going to build just a park. They don't do that anymore.
Right. So
and because people realize what an opportunity those kind of things bring, and they feed off of each other. So, take, for instance, the Atlanta Braves with Truist Park, which has only been open a couple of years, right? 2 or 3 years at the most. And, I haven't been down there, but I know the way they do it in metro areas now. And it's like I've said to many of my friends and whoever will listen, Spartanburg is not small anymore. You are in a metro area. Go outside of your own door. You can't even – you used to, as recently as 7, 8, 9 years ago, and I think you're originally from Union, but you have the Jonesville, and it's right outside of Spartanburg. Exactly. So you know that there was a time, even in your life, you're considerably younger than I am, Los, but that you could – you could go down a lot of streets and not see a whole bunch of traffic depending on the time of day. You can't do that anymore.
It's crazy now.
You have to make a conscious effort to get out in the country now to not be around traffic. And, that's good and bad. Take that for what it's worth.
Right.
But anyway, no, I moved here to the upstate, moved back to the upstate in '91, and have pretty much been here ever since. And that's kind of my story as far as where I've lived.
So I know you're really big on sports. So growing up and going through school, did you play any sports?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Did I not play any sports? No, I grew up playing the big three: baseball, basketball, and football.
Right.
And I had a good bit of success, relatively speaking, in all of those sports. I'll take baseball for instance. Nothing of note. The reason I'm starting with baseball is because I quit it earlier than the other sports. I haven't quit basketball yet, believe it or not. I'm 900 years old, but no, I really have. But no, baseball, I got tired. I played up until the 8th grade, but I got tired of getting hit by the ball. I don't know if I got hit more than other kids, but I got hit a lot, and I was just tired of getting hit by hard baseball, so I gave it up. And then going into my senior year at Spartan High, I had played basketball up until my senior year, and I also had played football and stopped that after the 10th grade year because the coaches wanted me to get in the weight room. I was a wide receiver at the time. And I didn't want to because my thought was it'll mess my basketball game up. Because when I grew up, that was the prevailing thought, that if you got all bulky and everything, you lose your touch and all that. But little did we know that could have benefited your game big time, but you just have to put in as much skill time as you do weight room time. You balance it out. You get your touch back. And but anyway, no, I played all three of them growing up. And as I look back on it, and as I've grown, and aged over the years, Carlos, I really regret that I didn't grow up in a more of a metro area, because when I was growing up in small town Lake City and then a little bit larger Spartanburg, which didn't really explode until I became an adult, I wish I would have grown up like in Atlanta, because they had a lot more soccer at the time. And I just think I missed the boat on that, because I think if I would have – and look, I look back at one of my annuals 2-3 years ago and found out that we did have soccer at Spartan High. I didn't even know it when I was going to school there, or many, several decades after it. And but anyway, no, I played all of them and actually got cut my senior year from Spartanburg High School basketball team, and so I was going into getting ready to graduate my senior year, and I was an athlete on the east side of Spartanburg without a letter jacket, without a Spartanburg High School letter jacket, and that couldn't be, couldn't happen. So I had to solve that problem, and so I decided it was either going to be track or baseball. Well, I was very quick, but I wasn't like fast enough. They didn't have a 60. I could have excelled in that. But the shortest race they had was 100, and I wasn't fast enough after 40 or 50 yards, so that was out. And I didn't see myself running any other thing. I couldn't stand running distances, And
that's a lot of running.
Don't know that I'd been any good at it anyway. But I just wasn't quite, to be quite honest, quite tall enough to be a good track star. I know there's some shorter guys who can really run, but after that first 100 yards or 100 meters or whatever, you kind of lose out to the larger guys. And so I decided to go out for baseball. Well, this was 4 years after I'd given it up. Now the ball's coming about 30 miles an hour faster. It's breaking about another 1.5 feet when the breaking pitches are thrown than it was when I was in the 8th grade, right? And so I couldn't really hit a baseball. I didn't have any great desire. I just wanted a letter jacket. But there was a rule in high school baseball, and it still may exist, but back then, whether it does or not now, I don't know. But back then, if a pitcher or a catcher got on base, you could pinch run for them every single time. And my coach knew, and I told him before the season, before I went out for the team, I said, look, I want a letter jacket. And and he knew, he knew me as an athlete, because all the coaches, they coach different sports most of the time.
But they talk, though.
Yeah, and they talk amongst themselves. And so he was fine with it. I was the fastest kid on the team. I know because the very first day, we all, lined up and ran like 60s, sprints. And, I won. I mean, not handily, but I was, because we had some kids that could run. But anyway, so he utilized that rule every time a pitcher or catcher would get on, and I would go and pinch run for him. And I started one game, and ironically, it was at Union, and I actually got an at-bat, and I put bat on ball, flied out the right field. Yeah, but, at the rest of the time I swing and miss. But I put bat on ball. But I started one game, but my coach, Coach Norris, utilized that rule to get me a lot of, and he also would put me in center field late for our very best player. People in the Spartanburg area, or if you've followed Major League Baseball for a long time, you know the name Wayne Tollison. Wayne was actually my idol, but it was his younger brother, who was actually a year or two younger than me, who was our starting center fielder and our best player. His older brother, Wayne, that I just mentioned, was, 4 or 5 years older, and an unbelievable athlete at Spartan High and in Western Carolina, and then played 10 years in the majors. He was really kind of my idol, and but it was his brother, who was also a great baseball player. Didn't go on to the major leagues or anything, but he was easily our best player. But my coach, once again, Coach Norris, was really cool and really understanding, and he helped me get that letter jacket. And you don't have enough time to me to tell you how I lost it. But anyway, we'll do that on the next one.
So, after high school, after your high school sports career,
yep.
What was next for you? Did you know immediately right after that what you want to do, since you had that deep connection and love for sports? Did you know immediately like what
as a career?
Yeah,
or
just
no.
like after,
or as a life path or anything?
Like
no, not really, and I still don't. I mean, I'm only halfway kidding, but no, there was like 4 or 5 guys who were like a year or 2 older than me. And they end up going to a military prep school called Fork Union. Very prestigious. Actually put a lot of guys in the NBA and the NFL and all that.
Okay.
And at the time, and in high school, I was more of a knucklehead, Carlos, than I am now. Not that hard to believe, right? But but I didn't study. I mean, I wasn't a dumb kid. I had no desire to really study. I read the sports page. Right. And I watched the sports on Channel 7 or 13 or 4. We only had 4 channels at the time. And, I just didn't apply myself, so I didn't make very good grades. I didn't make horrible grades, but not real good grades. And I really wanted to play college basketball. So I thought that this would be a good path. So we couldn't afford Fork Union as a family, right? So we found another one. It was called Frederick Military Academy in Portsmouth, Virginia. And so I enrolled up there, and they had, I think, 7th grade through 12th grade, and then they had a postgraduate class. That's what I was in. Kids who had either, barely graduated high school or dropped out or just had academic issues or discipline issues or whatever, sent them to military school, right? I mean, I was a knucklehead. I wasn't really a discipline problem, but I went to Frederick, and there were 30 postgraduates, right, in our class, and we were the oldest in the school, and 15 of us played on the basketball team. And so I was on the basketball team, and I happened to play behind quite possibly the best player I've ever played with, and I've played with pros before. I really have. I played with guys who ended up, brief stints in the NBA from time to time at like summer camps and stuff like that. But the guy that I played behind, and I mentioned this on our show on Monday night, Double Dribble, just passed away in December of last year. Carlos, when you get this age, it's about every other week when you hear about one. But R.I.P. Donnie Dodds, a kid from Chester, Pennsylvania, who was quite phenomenal on a basketball court. It was unbelievable. But I played behind him, and and with several other good players, I think at least 5 or 6 that signed D1, offers and played. Donnie ended up playing briefly at Temple, and it didn't work out, so he went to a junior college in California and then ended up at Hawaii, and then I don't know what happened after that, but kind of lost touch. But, we had some players, and that was really good. So then after that, after military school, I think the very next fall I enrolled at. Well, I'll tell you, if I could, I'll go a little bit deeper. I didn't have enough of my man card, Carlos. I'm going to put it like that, to stick it out in military school. I had something happen to me. It was my own fault, right? To where I got disciplined in military school. You know, I'm a storyteller, so I'm going to try to keep this short. But anyway, I had to. When you get disciplined in military school, they don't. At least the one I went to, they don't spank you with a belt or anything like that. You know what they do? They make you march. You go out, buy a flagpole, kid you not. It's a designated area.
And it's probably a lot tougher back then, too.
It's a strip of concrete about 30 yards wide, right? You're in your uniform and your hard, patent leather shoes, right? And you're marching with a fake rifle. You go to the end where the flag is. You do your about face or whatever. And then you march the other way. And you march for 50 straight minutes each hour. You get a 10-minute break. I got a 100-hour marching assignment, 100 tours, I think is what they call them. And I did like 90 of them. I sure did.
That's tough.
But anyway, and the details of the story are much longer, so I'll just keep it short. But the point I was trying to make is that the day of our last basketball game, the day before that night game, right? I called my mom and dad, and I talked to my dad, and I said, "Pop," I said, "if you don't come get me, man, I'm gonna thumb home." And this is up in the Tidewater area. It's just 7.5 hours from Spartanburg, right? And as I tell the story, and I've told it many times, and my late pop, you know what he should have said, and he is my dad. And boy, do I miss my dad. But anyway, just an unbelievable man of God, and just he should have said, "Well, we'll see you when you get here." But he didn't. He and my mom came and got me the next day, and they brought me home. But I had this dream as a kid growing up in the South. I don't know if you ever had this dream, Carlos, but I wanted to ball in the city. I wanted to play urban basketball. I had played around here, played everywhere around here, and at the beach and, North Carolina or wherever, but I'd never really played, city basketball. So I got an immediate job at Mayflower, moving furniture, okay. Worked there for 2 or 3 months, made a little bit of money, and then shifted over to Stuckey Brothers and Hart in Spartanburg, moved some more furniture, and by late May or whatever, I had $60 in my pocket and a one-way train ticket to Philadelphia, and I had stayed in touch with this guy I was telling you about, Donnie, that I played behind in military school. He stuck it out, and, well, I mean, how could he not? The dude was a freaking superstar in the military school. But although we had a good team, he was our best player. But anyway, I trained up. His girlfriend picked me up at 30th Street Station, downtown Philly, drove me back out to Chester, and I learned later I could have just got off in Chester, but I wanted to go downtown Philly. Anyway, so she drives me back out. I hang out with my boy at his family at their row home in Chester, Pennsylvania for 2 or 3 weeks. They end up going down to the shore. We in the South go to the beach. Right. They went to the shore, so I went with them. And lo and behold, 4 days after I'm down there, I run into one of my roommates from military school who's at the same beach for the summer. He's with his brother and like 2 or 3 other boys in like a bachelor summer crib, right? So I was like, yo, I'm going over there. So I did. And from there, I met a dude who had a crib downtown Philadelphia, and I ended up moving in that crib. He actually moved out because he was going to his dad's up in New Hampshire for the summer or something. So believe it or not,
so you had
for
a
a little while, I had a crib downtown Philly, man. And out one window, his bay window was Center City, Philadelphia. You walk down the hall and go to his kitchen. You look out on South Philadelphia and all the row homes and all that. And every afternoon I'd take me a walk and I'd find a game, man. And so I got to play the summer city basketball that and then later on, I can't remember how many years later, through college roommates. I stayed a summer outside of Boston and got to play a little bit downtown Boston. I played. My uncle lived in Manhattan. Went up and hung out with him a little bit. Got to play a little bit more. So,
So you had an opportunity to kind of move around and just stay.
Man, every summer I am king couch surfing, man. And I would. I don't know who will be watching this podcast. But and I don't want to take kids away from their families and everything, but I tell you, I had a heck of a time. Most people, when they start getting older and maturing and everything, they start thinking about money and how they can secure a future and all that. Lowe's, I had no concern about that whatsoever.
You just wanted to play ball.
I just wanted to travel, meet people, and play ball, man, and that's what I did.
And it's still good that you had those connections, too.
Yeah, no doubt.
So how did you transition?
Having lunch with that same dude that I ran into, that I moved into his house, having lunch with him Friday, and my other roommate from military school, circa 1978. Yeah, we're getting back together for the first time since 78.
Man, that's crazy.
How many years is that, man?
That's a good time right
That's
there.
Ancient. Anyway, we'll have a blast. Mike Wiedemann and Henry Atkins.
Oh, shout out to those two gentlemen as well.
Absolutely.
So how did you transition into getting into the sports media? Like how did that all start?
I can't remember exactly. I mean, I've got a story. I tell you what, I think I could piece this together. And this is going to take a little while. You don't mind,
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. I'm in junior high at Evans Junior High, right uptown. It's now the social services building or whatever, the Evans Center, right? That's where I went to junior high school.
Okay.
Before they even thought about having middle school, we had junior high, right? So anyway, there's this, I'm just going to keep it real on your podcast, man. It was this fat white kid that moved down from Jersey, right? And one of the first days of school, he brought a Street and Smith's basketball magazine, which was before people, I know I'm ancient, I'm a relic, have your laughs and all that. But I'm telling you, print used to be the thing long before the internet and phones and all that. And for the longest time, the basketball magazine was Street and Smith's basketball magazine. Then these others came out later.
I never even heard of it.
Anyway, I'm telling you, look it up. It's awesome. But in it, they would always have a lot of pictures. Mm-hmm. And he started thumbing through this thing as I was looking at it, showing me and all these other kids. And we were fascinated, because we had barely gotten into the NBA, much less the ABA or anything like that. But anyway, he started turning, and all of a sudden I started seeing pictures of Julius Erving, Dr. J, right?
Yeah.
And on one picture, on one page was 3 elongated pictures of Dr. J in action, in game action. Lowe says, God is my witness, I promise you, in one of those pictures, in a game, Dr. J is dunking behind his back. Not like this down here at his hip, but I can't, it was, and I started, and I think I even asked the dude, who's that? And he probably looked at me like I was from another planet. But anyway, I soon learned of Dr. J, and he became my all-time idol. And also, I found out, and I'm still a shorty now, I'm still in junior high, and I found out that, I told you there was 4 television stations. The guy up in Asheville, WLOS, he was the only guy that carried ABA highlights in his sports. You know how they do local sports at 11:15, 11:20, whatever? Right. I'd stay up as a kid in junior high, look at it. And also, my parents, one of those Christmases, gave me a clock radio, basic little box clock radio. To this day, best Christmas present I ever did. Because you know why? Because late at night, I would sit back in my room and I would turn the AM dial trying to find
it.
ABA games, and I found tons of them. I found the Nets at the Indiana Pacers or at the Denver Nuggets and all that. So I became this Dr. J freak, and it kind of went from there, and it was a case where I didn't know it, but that was kind of starting this love of radio and becoming a radio head and an AM radio head, because not quite as much lately, but up until 2 or 3 years ago, I'm the guy who will sit out in his car on the curb and listen in late in the evenings and listen to WFAN in New York, or listen to WIP in Philadelphia, or any of these city stations. And you can get them on the internet now, But I like to go out and hang out in my car sometimes. But anyway, that's kind of so here's how it happened. Okay.
Real quick before you continue with your story though, I just want to ask you, because when people talk about the greatest players of all time, and we're going to talk a lot more about this as the show goes on as well, but since you mentioned Dr. J, I know the ABA. You talk about the ABA and listen to it on the radio, but when you finally got a chance to just watch him, and then when they merged with the NBA, just how good was Dr. J? Because a lot of times when they talk about the greatest players of all time, which I wasn't born back then, so I didn't get a chance to watch Dr. J play. But when you talk about great players, just how good was Dr. J when you finally had a chance to watch him play?
First off, he doesn't, especially with today's audience, he doesn't get the credit he deserves. Mm-hmm. I will say this about Doc. His game wasn't as complete as Jordan's, okay? But there were certain things that he did, and because he was doing them when he was doing them, I mean, it would, if you were to go back and watch some highlights of Julius Erving in the ABA, it would defy any kind of logic, or it was unbelievable, his air show. Mm-hmm. And look, there's some high flyers in the game right now, and there have been. Vince Carter in that dunk competition was incredible. It's all time, yeah. There used to be a guy named Dr. Duncanstein who played at Louisville, Darryl Griffith, and he could. I mean, there's been some serious high flyers. There's some guys now that they get to the rim fast and quick and all that. Doc just took off, and it was like a freaking airplane, man. You didn't know. I mean, and plus he had the big hands, and the originator of kind of what Doc did, and I don't know that I've ever heard him or read it that he patterned his game after him or what he did after him, but Connie Hawkins was doing that. Spencer Haywood did some of that too, but Connie Hawkins with his big hands and all that. But Doc would catapult he would use the ball and momentum from, the run up to the jump. And he was more of a 1-foot jumper, but he could still jump off of 2. But most of his spectacular stuff around the rim was off of 1 foot with that big claw, pretty much doing anything he wanted. I think Doc could shoot the ball from deep, okay? He had a little set, right? Mm-hmm. But what I didn't see Doc do a whole bunch of, he may have had this, but, I only saw him a limited number of times. I saw highlights all the time, and I listened on the radio all the time. But as far as there's 3 levels you score the basketball at. You can score it from deep, you score it mid-range, and you score it at the bucket, right? Anything Doc did around the bucket was either a dunk or a finger roll or something majestic. It really was. I didn't see him shot fake from 18 or 20 and then put it on the deck, and instead of going all the way, pull up for a jump shot. Like Jordan did so many times, and others who are great mid-range jump shots. But Doc, there was such a mystique about him when he played. It was there in the NBA, but not to the level, I don't think, as it was in the ABA. And he was just so far ahead athletically, and it's hard to put into words. Mm-hmm. He was an unbelievable, electric yet elegant athlete. And was a winner too. And if you combine his ABA and his NBA scoring, and a lot of people would downgrade that because they say the ABA didn't play any defense at all and all that. You can find any basketball that it looks like they're not playing defense. Right. And a lot of people say that about today's game. Yeah, and they're wrong, right? Yeah, exactly. And so anyway, he was unbelievable. He was unbelievable. He was, and still to this day. I don't think he's the greatest of all time. I truly think he is easily one of the greats. There's no question.
We're definitely going to talk about the greatest of all time as the show goes on, because I definitely wanted to ask you about that as well. So kind of back to your story. You're saying you listened to it on listen to it on the radio. Yep. When was it that you finally got your first opportunity? Was it covering like sports? Was it like was it a radio gig? Was it working at a newspaper? Or like
No,
what was the opportunity?
I never did the schooling. Maybe I should have. Maybe I still should. Who knows? But no, here's how it happened for me. I started, like I said, I became an AM radio head at an early age, and then got away from it, not consciously, just kind of did because of college and
Right.
trying to get a job after college and all this and that, and then kind of came back to it. But anyway, I never had a great desire to coach, but I really enjoyed the scouting and recruiting aspect of it. I only played 1 year of college basketball. That's at Spartanburg Methodist College. I played behind a guy from Charlotte named Ted Dunn, was a very controlled, very good point guard out of Myers Park, and he actually was a teammate of the guy I told you I'm having lunch with Friday, one of my roommates in military school, right? But anyway, so I decided that the best thing for me to do to, kind of get a taste of scouting and recruiting was to go back and talk to the guy that I played for, Coach Jim Johnson at Spartanburg Methodist College, and I went out and talked to him about getting on his staff. And he told me what anybody else has ever told me, Ken, we don't have any money for you, but if you want to be a part of this staff and be a volunteer and all that, he said, what I'll do is I'll give you a high school pass, and I'll let you go look at local players for me. So I went right downtown. It was either a Wake West or somewhere like that, and I got me 2 zoot suits. No, it was the Salvation Army. They used to have these specials, whatever you could pack in a brown paper bag, you could have for like $8, right? So I found 2. Do you know what a zoot suit is?
I have no.
It's what the jazz players used to wear back in the day. Shiny. They're 2-piece suits. They're business suits, right? But they actually kind of looked like the European suits that the people started wearing a year or two ago. They're real tight. Mine wasn't near that tight, and I don't condone that at all. And I don't play that close, but these were kind of shaped like that, but they were real shiny. Anyway, so I put on a zoot suit, had my high school pass, and I went and looked at local players for this coach and gave him a report, that kind of thing. But anyway, so I also thought, if I'm going to scout and recruit and all that, maybe I should work some of these summer camps, a way to pick up some money, and do something I love and all that. So I started. Oh, and here's what I did. After I moved to Atlanta and then Charlotte and then came back in town after I had already done that early recruiting for the guy I played for, I just, out of the blue one day, said, I'm going to go back out to SMC in the gym. And I walked in the back door, K-Mac Auditorium down there at the bottom, and I walked in, and they were having a practice, and their new guy was there. Scott Rizzo was a young buck who originally from Pittsburgh, played at Buffalo, blew out his knee, and then got into coaching, was on George Felton's staff at South Carolina as a grad assistant and then just an assistant, I think maybe 4 years. But anyway, it was his first head coaching gig. And I walked in and stuck my hand out. When he walked over there, I was sitting on the bleachers, and introduced myself and just told him I was interested in scouting and recruiting. He told me the same thing my other coach told me. Got no money, but if you want to be a part of this thing.
Take advantage of the opportunity.
And it was early in the year, and most good coaches condition their team, and they get them up early, and that's what he was doing. So I was in my early 30s, so I got up every morning, I don't know, for a month and a half, whatever, and I went over there and ran with college athletes up hills and lifted weights at 5:30 in the morning, that kind of thing. And then I was on staff, and during that time, and then when I moved to Charlotte, I was trying to set up camps, and I heard that Bobby Jones, you know the name Bobby Jones, was a starting probably power forward with Julius Erving on the Sixers, originally from Charlotte, played at North Carolina, a defensive specialist, and also a man of God, a man of great faith, and a quiet man, but a very good man. I'd never met Bobby before. I lived 12 minutes from the school he was working at, Charlotte Christian. You know what I did, Lowe's? We used to have phone books, remember? I picked up the phone book. I looked him up.
Yeah, I remember.
I called Bobby
the phone
Jones
books, yeah.
on the phone, and I said, Coach, and I knew he was a Christian, and I said, Coach, I'm a Christian. I want to get involved with your program. He said, well, come see me. And I said, when? He said, right now. I got in my car. I drove over there. And 15 minutes after I called him on the phone, I'm in Bobby Jones's office. Anyway, long story short, I met with him probably 10, 15 minutes or something like that. Got involved with his program a very little bit. But even during that meeting, I said, Coach, I hope I'm not out of line here. I said, but I'm trying to set up these summer camps. Is there any way you could? And I knew to get in North Carolina's camp, you had to really know somebody. But I took a shot. I took a shot. Yeah. And I said, Coach, I hope I'm not out of line. But I said, is there anything you can do about? He said, give me a couple of days. He called me a day or two later, said, I got you in. So I ended up working North Carolina's camp for like 3 years. I ended up working South Carolina's camp because I had that. I think Rougeau, the guy I was telling you at SMC, he set me up with that. Ended up working Manhattan's camp because of the recruiter that Scott Rougeau was. He started bringing in these big-time D1 athletes, basketball players, and all these D1 coaches started coming from everywhere. Huggy Bear from Cincinnati, Bob Huggins. Yeah, all these. Fran Fraschilla, who is now an excellent analyst and all that, he was a head coach at Manhattan. I ended up setting up that trip to work his camp. But anyway, I'm at North Carolina working a basketball camp, and every week of camp, they have a coaches get-together. I think it was on Wednesday night. Camp runs from Sunday to Friday, right? Mm-hmm. So they have a get-together, and this one is at the Pizza Hut. Have you been to North Carolina's campus before?
No, the Tar Heels? Okay. No, I haven't been to the campus, no.
Not yet. Bucket list that one because that's a nice little, beautiful campus. But the main road is Franklin Street. There's a Pizza Hut right across from the Granville Towers. It was where they house all the athletes at camp and all the coaches and stuff, right? So the get-together, the drop-ins at Granville Towers. So I went over there, and I've got a Dean Smith story, but it'll take us way too long. My wife's going to get me for not being home by now. So anyway, I'll save that one for next time if you want. But anyway, I met a guy named Butch Estes who happened to be – Butch was a walk-on at North Carolina. I think he played on one of the championship teams. And anyway, he got into coaching. He got the Furman job. And at the time, he was coaching Furman. But so I sat down. It was the first time I ever met Butch. He was up there because his kids were in camp. Mm-hmm. And we sat down for 3 minutes. And he's, Ken, I got to go. He said, but if I, just like all these other coaches, because that's what you do, you network, right? He's like, if I can ever do anything for you, let me know.
Right.
I run into him 6 months later in bitter winter, and I found out, and I'd started to listen to Sports Talk Radio. I found out he was doing a radio show. Now, Los, you've been in this business quite a while now, right? Mm-hmm. My man was doing a 30-minute radio program. Come on, man. Come on, 30-minute radio. That's an ad.
Yeah, that's going by so quick.
Yeah, that's an ad.
There's no time.
You had no time to do a show. But he was driving over. You know how long it takes to get to Furman? He was doing it at Vic Bailey. They had actually built him a glass booth inside the dealership where he did his show. Did it Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, something like that. It was a 30-minute show. So anyway, I was like, and keep in mind now, I had gotten up the guts to call a national radio show. Never done it before. Shortly before this happened, and I got on the air, right? And what
happened?
Oh, gosh, it was horrible.
Was it bad?
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad, okay? I don't even know how to describe it, right? Mr. Wordsmith, please describe what happened. No, I can't. So anyway, but somehow the bug, I didn't know it was in me, but it was kind of in me, right? Mm-hmm. So I say to Butch, I say, Coach, remember what you told me back up in Chapel Hill, da-da-da-da? And he's like, yeah. And I said, I know you got a radio show. So how about you let me come in? He said, I'll tell you what, Ken. He said, I've got 3 headsets. He said, I've got a guy on there tonight. This was like Wednesday, I think. He said, I got a guy on there tonight and maybe tomorrow night. He said, but if you want to come, this guy was like a shooting specialist or something. But Butch was just going to interview him, right? He said, if you want to come, you're more than welcome to, you might not get to talk much. So I came that first night on, I think it was a Wednesday, and they were, chopping it up a little bit. And right at the very end, I think they asked me, and I said like one sentence, right? Next day, same thing happened, right? The next day, but I got to say about 2 sentences. Right at the end of the show, 30-minute show. Keep that in mind. Friday, Los, all right? I go on there, and the dude's not there, so I'm on with Butch.
It's your opportunity.
So we chopped it up.
Mm-hmm.
You know the bug's hitting me now, right? So then I was, I was like, he kept saying, you want to come tomorrow? You want to come? And I was like, yeah, coach. Because I was eating it up. I had the bug now. I didn't even really know it, right? So then I'm on like every day for about a week. About week 2 or so, he goes, Ken, I got to go out of town tomorrow. You think you can host this show? I was like, I don't know, coach, but I'll try, right? So I did all this prep and everything.
Right.
And I did okay. It was my very first time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he comes back the next night. We do several more shows. He goes, Ken, you want to do it again? I got to go out of town. I was like, yeah, coach, I can do that. I got all big-headed. Yo, man, 30-minute show. The last 15 minutes, I was glad I had brought a Sports Illustrated because I was reading out of the magazine, man. I got back up big and bold, So I'm reading out of this one, and I learned a valuable lesson that night. If you ever get this opportunity again, you got to prep. You got to have
it's
some
important,
outline.
yeah.
You got to do the work behind the scenes and all that. So then, and so about the 3rd or 4th time he asked me to host, I asked the dude I was telling you about, Scott Rizzo, to come over. And you have to understand, I don't think you've ever met Rizzo, have you?
No, I haven't.
He's like a modern-day Seinfeld. I don't know if you're a big fan, but you know about Seinfeld.
I've heard of it, yeah.
You know the wit and everything, right? This dude's a modern-day Seinfeld. He really is. So he comes over, and I'm hosting the show, and he's on the show. We do a 30-minute show. We laugh the whole time, but we had a great show.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing happens about a week later. He comes over. We do the show together. We laughed. Had a great time. Had what we thought was a good show, and hopefully it was. Right after that, he goes, Coach, we need our own. We called each other Coach because I was on his staff, right? Volunteer. And he goes, Coach, we need our own show. I was like, yeah, we do. No, I didn't say that. That's a lie. I said, stop. He's like, yeah, man, we do. I said, you serious? He said, yeah. I said, if you're serious, I'll go and see what I can do. So what I did was the only little radio station, I think there were 2 or 3 in Spartanburg, but I rode down to the one where I knew that's been my radio home now for close to 40 years, but I just walked in there, right? I parked my car and walked in there, asked who the owner was, met him. It was a guy named T.C. Lewis, owned the show at the time. And so basically, I learned that they would sell you airtime if you had content and money to buy the airtime. So I learned how to become an independent radio contractor, and I negotiated a price with TC, and he gave me a good rate, and so we started doing a show. And so I just started doing those, and that's kind of how I got my start.
I know we might be a little pressed for time, and we got to definitely talk about the NBA, but something I want you to talk to the audience about, just realizing those opportunities. Like when those coaches told you at the time, you went in and asked them about certain opportunities, and they told you, hey, we don't have any money, but if you want to just come in and learn and just do the job, then you're more than welcome to. And you took advantage of those opportunities. Same thing with, working in radio, where you, like you said, at first no airtime to talk, then maybe like 2 minutes, and then after that they would give you a chance to like run the entire show. Just talk to the audience real quick about, taking advantage of those opportunities, because for some people, if they want an opportunity, but if it isn't exactly what they want or expect it to look like, they may turn it down, whether it's for money or, like you said, even if it's for that airtime, they don't get that certain amount of airtime, they might turn down those radio opportunities. But just talk to the audience the importance of, realizing the opportunity is right in front of you, and just to take advantage of those opportunities.
Absolutely. Don't think you've arrived if you don't have anything on your resume. But by the same token, build your resume. And the way that I know to do that, you got to do a lot of volunteer stuff.
Absolutely.
And you're a testimony to that.
Yep.
I mean, it's, in other words, you can drill for oil all you want. You probably ain't going to hit the first 78 times.
That's a fact.
You got to keep drilling.
Yep.
You got to keep drilling. So you got to, in other words, people are going to know how bad you want it or how bad you don't, and it's just like stuff like this. Who knows what? See this? Maybe somebody want a crazy old man, to do something else. Maybe you want me again. Who knows? But you gotta get out. You gotta try.
You gotta try.
You gotta. To use the baseball metaphor, you got to step up there. You ain't hitting nothing. You ain't swinging at.
That's what I said about Intercom. When I was at Intercom working with you guys, sitting back there, I enjoyed the time, but I knew that wasn't my ceiling. But at the same time, I just wanted the opportunity to come in and work and learn. So, man, I was driving an hour from home, like all the way from Jonesville all the way up to Greenville, sometimes 4 or 5 in the morning, to work on WRD, the news station, then come in and work with you guys at ESPN Upstate. But I was only making $10 an hour. So when you factor all that in, that hour drive, I was in the hole. I barely did even profit, but it was just that opportunity to learn. And while I was there, I probably was there about 6 or 7 months, like I was telling you. Then after that, Lonzo taught me a great deal about editing audio. Before then, I couldn't even edit audio. So that 3-hour show that you guys were doing, 2-3 hour show you guys were doing, by the time we finished all of that, I could edit the whole show in maybe like 20, 25 minutes. If that, I could cut it out and edit. Before then, it took me like an hour, 2 hours just to sit down and learn how to do it. But it was the opportunity that I realized that was in front of me. So I just like, you know what? It's a great chance for me to learn this stuff. And now, like when I can go edit my own audio, video footage, I give a great deal of credit. I give a good deal of credit to you guys for that opportunity to sit in there, watch how you guys learn the show, and all. But you were a big part of the show too.
Yeah.
So
I don't know about big, but
you definitely had some interesting takes.
I don't know.
So, and we're definitely gonna get into some of these takes right now. Okay. We're gonna talk about the NBA before we get ready to wrap it up.
Okay.
So, for you, like speaking of the NBA, just talk about your opinion, like the state of the NBA now. Like, how do you view like overall? Is like how do you like it?
Look, I think it's fine. I even heard a guy on local radio today just absolutely trashing it. But no, man, stop. I look. Is it perfect? No.
Right.
Do they shoot the ball from deep a little bit too much? Yeah,
we saw that with Boston the other night.
We did, and maybe that points out the weakness that they didn't need to get exposed, but did.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got some on that if you need it, but no, I think it's fine. I'm a big believer in. Look, the last 40 to 70 years. Humans have gotten bigger, stronger, and faster.
Mm-hmm. That's a fact.
And the natural explanation of that is that this country and others, I'm sure, have put steroids in the meat and the milk into the cows that produce the meat and the milk and the other animals, the chickens or whatever, and we're just bigger people. And we're way more numerous than we've ever been. And yet, sure, kids growing up in America, wherever they grow up or all across the world, they're into a lot of different things because there's a lot more to do today, but there's so many more kids that still a big chunk of them play sports.
Mm-hmm.
And when more kids play it, the competition becomes better. You get more cream rising to the top. In other words, you give me a pool of 10 athletes and give me a pool of 1,000 athletes, and I can promise you, even if you're a great coach, I'm probably going to beat you 8 out of 10 times, because there's just more to pull from. So, man, it's I think the league is fine. I would like to see a little bit more mid-range. I enjoy watching Jimmy Buckets.
It's underrated.
The mid-range game. And he still shoots the three okay, too. But, and Boston maybe should have learned that lesson. But when you see a team execute, like Boston this year when they were rolling, you just you realize that, and I tell people, really the difference is sit up close. You can see it on TV a little bit,
but when you actually
really
in
want
person,
to appreciate, you get a chance to see a lot
agree.
of NBA games up close, and it is just a world of difference. Because when you see them on TV, or like my very first experience, I'll try to keep this one short, of seeing an NBA game. I think I was 15 years old. I went with my church, and we went to the Chick-fil-A right near the Omni where the Hawks used to play, and we had the cheap seats are way up in the air. You don't remember the Omni, do you?
No, I don't.
Look up the Omni. The seats were like Sherpa high. You know what I'm talking about? They were like Himalayan high, right? So you're looking down on the court, and I don't even know. I don't know if I voiced it or whatever, but in my head, man, I can do everything those guys can do. So the next game I went to, down in Atlanta again, in the Omni again too. I can't remember who I was with or whatever, but I started walking down the floor, closer to the floor, closer to the action, because then if you knew what you were doing, you could sit anywhere you want. And I don't know if I was 16 or 17 by then or 18 or whatever. Might have been 18 or 19 by then. But anyway, as I walked closer and closer to the floor, dudes started getting big, man. And so I realized that as skilled as I might have been, as a small person, those dudes foot and a half taller than me were doing the same thing. And it's just amazing the level of talent, because you really do have to have it to play in that league. And they're giants.
Yeah,
it's
a different
giants.
Skill set. Now these guys are when you look at them, like a Kyrie, the way he can handle the ball, man, it's so crafty.
It's ridiculous.
Sometimes it look like some of these guys may travel with the way they do these steps in Euro.
They do, but I'd say more times than not, it's your eyes playing tricks on you.
Yeah,
and do officials? I think at pretty much any level, especially the highest levels like the NBA and D1 and stuff like that, and in Europe, are they a little bit liberal? They allow a little bit. Yeah, it's borderline at times.
Because they know they're still about entertainment, too.
And look, I call games for PC, right? I'm the color analyst. I'm going on year 11 this fall, if they'll have me back, and I think they are. But, and I see it in those D1 games. Sometimes I'm like, and I might even say it on the air. Sometimes we do it on ESPN Plus. That's, that's a little bit liberal, that kind of thing. And there is a little bit more than that, of that than you would like. But overall, to answer your question, Los, the state of the NBA is fine. It's fine.
My only concern, for me, going to covering the Hornets game, I think the guys are super talented. My only concern will be the load management. That's the only thing I worry about.
That's an issue.
Because it's like a lot of times these guys will play the first night of a back-to-back, but the second night they won't play. Like I remember vividly, Milwaukee, the night before they played Charlotte, I think they played the Lakers on a Friday night, and Giannis, I think Chris Middleton had finally came back, Jrue Holiday, all these guys, they played against L.A. that Friday night. I think the Lakers beat them. Saturday night they had to come to Charlotte, and the starters sat out. So basically it was like, I think Giannis, Middleton had just came back. He sat out. Jrue Holiday, I can't remember. He might have played. I want to say he sat out as well. But majority of the starters sat out the second night when they played Charlotte. Yeah. Even though they beat Charlotte, it's just like, man, these guys, they don't play a lot of back-to-backs anymore. Like back in the day, like my favorite all-time player was Kobe. You never had to worry about him sitting out of a back-to-back or anything. Back then, the guys just played no matter what, unless they were like seriously injured. Now, guys are quick to, sit down on a back-to-back, or they got 3 games in 4 nights. They're going to sit one of those nights. So for me, it's like, thankfully, covering the games, we get in for free. But the guys or the fans that have to pay their hard-earned money, it's like
that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money, and to me, I'm like, I almost would say I would really wait till the day of the game to buy a ticket, because you don't know whether these guys are going to play or if they're going
15 minutes before game time.
Exactly, they
just
shut it down. Like sometimes the guys will go out there and have a good warm up, and then next thing you know, they're still inactive. And I agree with something Charles Barkley said a couple months ago. He was saying, well, they instituted the rule now where to be eligible for like a major award, like MVP or whatever, you got to play a minimum of 65 games. Yeah. So, like, I agree with Charles Barkley to the point where he's saying he doesn't like them putting
like
a number on it.
3/4 of the games, right? Because it's 82.
Right.
Break it down in 20s, 20, 40, 60, 80, right?
So now when you do that, like Charles Barkley was saying, is these guys know, okay, I can miss up to 17 games, a 17-game window where I know I can miss games, so I can play a stretch here, sit out a couple games here, play some more, sit out here and there, just to like rest. So now you put a number on it, so these guys know as long as they play 65 games, they're going to be eligible. So now these guys might take advantage of it, be like, you know what, I'm going to play these first 25, 30 games. I might miss the next 7 or 8, and I still got another window where I can miss some more games. So now that you put that number on it, these guys know as long as they play 65 games, they're eligible. So I agree with Charles Barkley on that point where you put a number on it. Now these guys, hopefully they don't do it, but they know if they need to, they got like this window where they can sit out and you still be eligible for these awards. Like that's the only thing. My concern, going to cover the games, the guys just with low management that might affect the game long term. But I hope they do. Now that they put their number,
something's got to be done about it. And I agree. Look, maybe speaking a little bit from the other side, it's kind of what we were talking about a little while ago. There's so many more. I mean, there's more teams now in the NBA. There's travel. You're going up against world-class athletes every night, and it's a very physical sport. And look, this thing about you can't touch anybody anymore, and it's a soft game and all that, man, to me, come on, man.
Speaking of, Wembanyama, no doubt going number one, everything around it, it's kind of interesting to me. I want to ask you your opinions as far as, like, the NBA draft and, like, the lottery part of it. What's your take on the lottery? Because for me, I'm gonna let you go first, but to me, it's a little interesting. But for me, no doubt, like even during the season, like I would talk to some of the guys during security, like after the Hornets games or whatever, and I would just tell them just straight up, Spurs definitely getting the number one pick. I just felt like no doubt, regardless of who had the worst record or anything, even though I don't even think they had the worst. I wanted to say it was either Houston or Detroit. One of those teams had the worst record in the NBA, but I was like, regardless. Spurs, to me, I felt like no doubt was getting the number one pick. And I'll let you go first, and then I'll tell you why I would say that. But what's your take overall on the NBA lottery?
You mean as far as
do you think it should go to
it?
Yeah, do you think it should go to the team with the worst record? Like, how do you think like the lottery is?
I think that's why they have the lottery, so they could stay away from
teams
directly tanking. You know what I'm saying? In other words, you got the worst record in the league, and then that next team has the second worst record, so they automatically pull first, then second,
right.
second. So I think that's what the lottery is designed to do. Is it doing the job? Somewhat, but I'm sure there's. Yeah, I mean, we can put a man on the moon or several men on the moon. We got to be able to figure out how to make that a little bit better,
right.
to relieve that tanking aspect
right.
in the league. And maybe we'll make some strides.
I
don't have the answer.
Yeah, I get that part, but to me, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but to me, I look at it this way. To me, it was kind of like, if you look at it, anytime that a lot of not every time, but a lot of times when these guys, like a big time player leaves a smaller market, it seems like the ping pong ball fall their way. So if you look at it, just a few examples. When I look at LeBron leaving Cleveland the first time, they ended up getting the number one pick and they took Kyrie. Just a few years ago, when Anthony Davis got traded and went to L.A., the ping pong balls fell to New Orleans. Zion. He goes to New Orleans. Then number two, Ja goes to Memphis. So it's like, in a sense, these guys, it kind of helps the smaller markets in a sense. And so that's why I was saying in my mind, it's like Spurs they're going to get the number one pick because really they're a smaller market and they really haven't been relevant since, Tim Duncan and Kawhi and those guys left. So if you don't kind of help those smaller markets, what's going to keep those teams relevant? So for me, I was looking at it those ways. Like anytime, almost like a guy – even when Harden left Houston, the ping pong ball fell their way. I think they took Jalen Green. I can't remember if Kate Cunningham went number one or two, but the ping pong balls fell and kind of in favor of help Houston out. But it's like when those guys leave from the bigger markets, the ping pong balls fall that other way and kind of help them. So I was like, for me, that's why I was like, not being a conspiracy theorist, but I was like, to me, if I had to put money on, I always felt like the Spurs were going to get that number one pick. I almost felt like it kind of helps those smaller markets stay relevant because, free agents not just going to go to San Antonio and say, hey, I want to go here and just play there in a smaller market. It's like, so these guys have to, in order to keep those guys relevant and keep them in the market, the ping pong ball, I feel like that's what kind of helps those smaller teams stay relevant. That's just my opinion on it.
No, that's good. I like it.
It was just something I just thought about. It's like when you look at these guys, the superstars leave these markets, and it'll kill these smaller markets. So the NBA has to do something to kind of like help them out. That's just my thought on the whole thing. That's just how I look at it.
Yep.
But we got a few more subjects, and we're gonna get ready to wrap it up. As far as the NBA playoffs, You know, the NBA Finals start tomorrow. So what's your take overall? Well, let me get to this first. Like overall, like how did you view the playoffs this year before we get to the NBA Finals?
Well, Denver's on a historic run, and I think I agree with a lot of people that right now Nikola Jokic is the best player on the planet.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that. Yep.
And I think the altitude thing is real. The numbers bear it out. I'm pretty sure Miami's going to struggle with that. They just came out of a 7-game series with a physical team, and they asserted their dominance in Game 7. I give them that, even though I didn't call that. I called just the opposite.
I thought Boston was
just to be honest, I really did too. But maybe they're not quite ready. But I thought they would be. But anyway, I just look. Let's see. Halftime of Game 1, Miami's still in the game. I guess you give them a chance, but that altitude thing is real. It really is. And they've had a lot of rust, but, there could be rust. It's the rest versus rust theory.
Because Denver they haven't played in over a week.
It's been 11 days, 10 or 11 days by the time they play. Tip it tomorrow night at 8:30. But as skilled as that team is and as skilled as Jokic is and the way they like to get up and down, that's what they try to do, man, and they do it extremely well. They set the pace early of getting up and down, and usually it's Jokic with the ball in his hands at 7 foot and 280 or whatever he is. He's leading the break. And look, man, you could make a case the dude's the best passer ever in the history of the game.
The way he passes the ball.
As
a big man.
And his vision and his delivery, and plus he's a great shooter from anywhere, can score from anywhere. And he's a great rebounder, and he's in excellent shape, and his game has just come around. Anyway, but he's far from the only one. In Jamal Murray, you've got a big-time lead guard who can score it and has a penchant for doing so in the clutch. And look, I think Kentavious Caldwell-Pope gets the short end of the stick. He is a really good basketball player who does some real good things exactly what that team's need. You can't forget Michael Porter, a 6'10"
sharp
guy,
shooter.
Can shoot it, but he's also athletic, can mix it up around the hole. He started to play some defense this year in the playoffs. And, and just and look, they may not be that deep, because and I'm suffering from – East Coast bias because I hardly ever see Denver play, even though I've seen them play some this year in the playoffs, so I can't really think too much of their bench. I know they have the Brown kid from Kansas who gives them some pretty nice minutes.
Bruce Brown, he's playing big.
No, Bruce Brown is not the one. I was talking about the other kid, but Bruce Brown has been playing big time. He's playing. He always plays bigger than his actual height, and he's actually shooting a 3 pretty well now, and he's helping them big time. He's had a real nice playoff run. That's a good call on that. And Aaron Gordon is playing great basketball, but they just really fit well and they complement each other. Look, good luck trying to outscore them.
I was about to say, it sounds like you leaning towards.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Denver.
I made a mistake of not giving Miami the benefit of the doubt. I really thought Boston was going to be the first team to turn that thing around. And, there was some things that in any victory, there's some things that have to occur. I mean, think about the ifs. If Jason Tatum doesn't turn his ankle, maybe he gets it going, maybe he doesn't. But if he gets it going, that helps other people get it going. And confidence breeds confidence. Maybe he hits a couple of long ones, and that frees up Jaylen Brown not to have so much pressure on him to score the ball, or because Jaylen had a horrible game, but he's doing stuff that. Look, I think
a lot of turnovers, man.
Yeah, 8 turnovers by one guy, and that's way too many. And look, I think Jaylen Brown, his future is as bright as anybody's in that league. I think the sky is the limit for that kid, and he does need to tighten up his handle, no doubt.
Oh, yeah.
But his ability and his athleticism and all that, and his shot-making ability, and he can shoot the ball from deep and all that, just got to tighten up his handle.
Before I ask you about your finals prediction, what would you do with Boston? Because, now the talk is, do you break up Tatum and Brown? My opinion, I'm keeping them together. I keep them together. You're going to have to pay a hefty amount to keep both of those guys because of the the Supermax deal that's in play.
That's right.
But do you keep them or do you break them up?
Well, I don't know. That's a loaded question, and that may be a whole podcast in itself. I could see either way. I love both of them. And I don't agree with people who say that they're basically the same player and you don't need that. If I can have a Tatum and a Brown and I can pay both of them, yeah, I do need that.
Yeah.
And I think they play well together.
I agree.
And
I don't feel like there's any type of animosity between those two guys. I feel like they play well together.
I agree. Both of them. Look, first off, both of them are not only very smart, but they're very mature.
Mm-hmm.
And not only on the basketball court, but just as individuals. As these are businessmen. These are businessmen. And they know to succeed at the highest level in what they do need to get along, and they do need to share the basketball, and they do need to, do what they do. And look, both those guys. Look, to me, the thought of, well, they have basically the same skill set, so I don't need both of them. You're going to tell me you can get double the skill set and you don't want that?
Exactly.
I mean, what is it? Where's that logic?
I say. To me, I'm thinking long term. I keep them together because I know, like at one point when KD was out there, they were talking about possibly a Jaylen Brown trade for Durant. I'm not doing that because you trading a 26-year-old guy for KD who's 34, 35 towards the back end of his career. Even though KD is a great player, still, I'm not breaking that up to get an older player. When you got these two guys for the next 10 years, you can build around them. I think maybe just get them like a true point guard, like a real floor general, to kind of like help run the show. Because when I was watching the game the other night, all they did was just jack up threes. Even when they were just missing, they weren't running. Yeah, they weren't running enough plays. So if you got a pure point guard, even though I like Marcus Smart and Malcolm Brogdon, if you get a true point guard, they can like run, get these guys in different sets, get them in where they want the ball in their favorite spots. That'll help those guys out. But to me, just to break them up and just think you're going to find somebody that's going to be X times better than Jaylen Brown, it's not really going to happen. Those guys are all-NBA player. So for me, I keep them together. You give them the Supermax because they're going to command it. And then you just got to figure out a way. Because those two guys by themselves can get you 45 to 50 wins. Yeah. You just got to build around them and build a solid team around them. But for me, they're right. And just remember – a lot of people haven't been saying it, but they signed Gallinari last offseason. He tore his ACL. So he'll be back next year, give them some more shooting, something that they struggle with. So once they get him back, even though he won't be a great defender, you still got another guy who can stretch the floor, give him more space because he can shoot.
Score some points.
Yeah, so that's something else that's going to work in their favor. But for me personally, I'm keeping Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum together.
And I like that model too. I like it a little better than breaking them up. I can understand, and they may get broken up. But if they don't and they stay with it, I think one thing that they could have really used this year, especially in Game 7, is another way to score the ball, especially somebody on a low block. Now, don't get me wrong. I love Robert Williams.
Right,
and I love Al Horford. But, Robert Williams doesn't score the ball on the low block except for cleaning stuff up and on alley-oops and stuff like that. But he's not a guy like a classic center like we used to see in Olajuwon and Ewing and those guys.
Dump it down to him and go to work.
Dump it down to him and go to work, and he commands a double team, or he'll have 40 on you and 18 rebounds, and you'll lose. You know what I'm saying? But if they would have had that guy this year, and look, those guys don't come along every day, especially in today's game.
Right, it's hard to find.
And they're kind of dinosaurs. But imagine if you'd have had a guy. Imagine you had Kevin Garnett on this team this year. Even with Tatum turning his ankle the other. I immediately and I'm getting that's my focus a little bit. Even with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and Smart and Brogdon and whoever else, Derek White, who is unbelievable. I love him. I think everybody's falling in love with Derek White in his game. But even with all that, my focus, if I've got a proven low post scorer who can really go to work down there, like if Garnett would have been on that team.
It makes the game easier for him.
And especially when Jay said, I'm dumping, and I'm calling a timeout, and I'm saying, look, we're going down to KG until they do something about it.
Yep.
And if they don't double him, KG's going to turn on anybody they got and just shoot that little – 10 to 17-foot jump shot, little fadeaway, and he's going to have 40, and But anyway, I just think they had a borderline great team, but with some restrictions. Like if they don't shoot it well, then they better not turn it over a lot.
Right.
And Game 7 was that double whammy.
Yeah.
They turned it over way too much. And if they would have shot it well, they could have stayed in the game. But they're at home, and that does mean something. But home or road, those two things cannot coexist, and you expect to win, especially against a good basketball team like Miami with a lot of grit. Just not going to happen.
Absolutely. So real quick,
okay,
Miami, Denver in the finals. Who you got and how many games?
I always hope and pray for a 7-game series.
Right.
Even though I have a job now where I have to go to bed at a decent hour. But I found out that ESPN replays it the next morning at like 4:30 or 5 o'clock, so I can get up the next morning and watch the second half. I think the edge has to go to Denver because of and I think this altitude thing can't be overstated, man. I really don't. Plus the fact that they've had rest, plus the Jokic factor, plus all those other guys who are really good too and play well together. I don't think Miami's not going to win a game, but I hate to be vague, but if I had pressed to the wall, I'd say Denver in 6, and I hope 7. But I think it's going to be surprisingly good. But I fear Game 1 is not going to be real good.
Initially, when I thought about this series, I was like, man, this going to be short and sweet. I was like Denver in 5, but the more I think about it now, even though I picked Miami to lose every series, I picked against them against Milwaukee, I picked the Knicks, I picked Boston, and they proved me wrong every time. I just look at it like, I think on paper you'll look like Denver just going to blow them out the water, but sitting back thinking about it, I do get them shot. I think Game 1 might be one of the best chances to steal a game since they just played, 3 days ago. Denver haven't played in over a week, like you said, 10, 11 games. So at least they've been in some kind of condition, right? And even though I know Denver, they've been running and everything, but it's not like playing an actual game. So you can go in and steal Game 1, just build some momentum. And I always look at it like I wouldn't mind being the team on the road at home at first. I mean, on the road during the series starting out, because if I can go in and just steal at least one game on the road, that's all you're trying to do is just get one. Yep. You want to get both if you can, but if not, you just get one game and then you go back home. Then you playing with house money. Then you just got to take care of home court. But I just think, even though I picked against Miami, I'm going to pick against them again. I'm going to take Denver in 6 games. I don't think it's going to be as easy, just for the simple fact, I think you just got to let Yoke eat. I think you got to let him get his triple-double. I think you got to let him get 40, 50 points every game, but you just got to try to defend everybody else. Keep a body on Michael Porter. I just let Yoke eat the whole game, maybe until like the fourth quarter. Then you try to like double him. Because you already know, KB, what happens when guys just watch one guy just go to work the whole time. They just stand around. They get lackadaisical. And then you finally try to shoot them. But you know shooters like to have a rhythm.
Yeah.
So that's why I say
shooters like to shoot.
Shooters like to shoot. So I just let Yoke eat the whole entire game. And then just try
maybe somebody else doesn't come up big.
Exactly.
Because they hadn't been touching.
Haven't been touching the ball. Okay. But, I mean, you can sag off of Aaron Gordon. He's not the greatest shooter. I'm going to keep a body on Michael Porter because, you know, he'll knock that. Jamal Murray.
He'll surprise you a little bit sometimes. I'm telling you. He will.
I'll take my chance with Gordon over Michael Porter. You know, Murray.
Yeah,
he's going to get his too.
He's streaky like everybody, but when he gets on,
when the money on the line, though,
he is there.
He's nice. But I just think for me, you got to use kind of like you got to like use your weakness as your strength and just let Yoke, because you can't stop Yoke. No, they don't have anybody that can guard him.
Nobody.
I think you just gonna put Kevin Love on him. Start it out, I guess. Try to put Bam on him from time to time, even though Bam is too small. But regardless, I think you just let Yoke eat the whole entire game, get what he want, and just hope everybody else is off.
I even though Miami, I think almost immediately after Game 7, after they fulfilled their media obligations, you know, they hopped on a plane and went straight to Denver. They didn't go home.
Right.
Went straight to, and that's smart. You know, of course, they're coached by one of the all-time greats, I think, Eric Spoelstra. I think you got to give him his due.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and the organization is true. You know, Pat Riley's a godfather. of hoops, and it's that culture, and there's a lot to be said for that, and all that is true, right? And so they know what they're doing, right? But I think even if they're very good in the first half, I think they run out of gas in game one. I really do, and mainly because of the altitude and the pace that Denver's going to set. And hopefully, for Miami's sake, Denver won't be shooting it real well. If Miami defends well enough, and it's the big key is defensive transition for Miami. If they can slow them down and Denver doesn't shoot the ball real well, they'll be in game one. But I just think in the second half they're going to run out of gas, and their best opportunity in Denver is going to be game two because they stay out there and they get more acclimated to the elevation, to the altitude. And so I look – if Miami's going to still win in Denver and have any chance to win the series, I think it's going to be in game two.
And I think they said Tyler Hero may not be available to game three possibly. I think they definitely need him. Kyle Lowry, I think he's going to have to show up and play big. Kevin Love, I think you put him on. I think you just have to throw that body.
Hands on deck.
Yeah,
no
everybody's got
to play well.
Yeah, playoff Jimmy. He got to show up now.
But
Bam played terrible against Boston.
Offensively,
he was terrible.
He was bad.
He can't average 12 and 10 or 12 or whatever and think they're gonna beat Boston. Bam gonna have to show up.
Well, I don't care how many he averages. It just needs to be efficient. Could be a game where Jimmy's getting big production offensively, and you get some other
Caleb Martin.
Some games.
Yeah,
Caleb Martin's been unbelievable. He got 4 out of the 9 MVP votes, and if I was the other one, I do too.
I think he should have got it.
And look, and you can easily make the case that a lot of what he did came off of the concentration on Jimmy defensively by Boston, and there is some truth to that.
Right.
But Caleb Martin had opportunities to score the ball and make plays, and 87% of the time he did. He had very little down to his game. He made big shots and big plays and played very well defensively as well. I haven't watched the tape, but he played spectacular. He introduced himself to the world.
He did. When it was time, because he was the guy that kind of, even though I know Jimmy had, 28 points or whatever the other night.
26 or 27.
But Caleb just made the plays that kept them afloat the whole entire game. So I was like, for me,
big shots.
I would have gave it to him. So that's what I'm saying. Even though Miami has a lot of guards and role players, I don't really count them out of it. I'm still going Denver just because I think Denver has an all-around better team. But with Eric Spoelstra on the sideline, Miami, I definitely believe 100% Miami believes they're going to win the series.
Yeah, no question.
And if you can beat those teams in the East, I'll give you a chance.
That's
that's why I say if just looking at it on paper, you'll say Denver in 5 games. But I think Miami's tough enough to get at least 2 games off of them.
I think so.
2 more things I want to do before we get out of here.
Okay.
When we talk about all-time great players, this is going to help Yoke's legacy. But of course, I don't think people are still going to mention him as like an all-time, like top 10, top 5 player. But speaking of that, like I just want to know Yoke, because you've watched a lot of basketball over the years. You've seen a lot of the greatest play. Give me your top 5 players of all time.
My top 5 players of all time.
Yeah.
I'll just go by position.
Okay.
Okay. And there's some that are really close. So when I name the position and the player, I might say the other guy that I almost chose. Okay. So my one guard, and it really, you mentioned this a little while ago, the game is played differently. It's played from outside in instead of inside out, So let's go position by position. I think the lead guard is almost got to be Magic Johnson, right? But there's also a case where if you're playing outside in basketball, you go with Steph or somebody like that. But here's a surprise. Number 1, I love me some Marcus Smart. We did this on our show. And we build an all-time team.
We talk about all-time.
Yeah, I know it.
Great.
I know it. But here's what I tell you. If you come with Magic Johnson at your 1 or Isaiah Thomas or you name some other great lead guards, John Stockton or whoever you want to put at 1, Steph Curry, Dame Lillard, any of these all-time great lead guards, I just tell you, if I've got Marcus Smart and you're playing me, get a good night's sleep. Get a good freaking night's sleep.
So you're building I'm talking about all time the greatest players ever.
I don't care.
Not just a great team.
I don't care. I love me some Marcus Smart. Smart. Okay, that's all right.
Okay, go ahead. It's your list. Go ahead.
He's way better offensively than people think, and he's as good a defender anywhere on the court has ever played basketball, and he might be 1A when it comes to the most fierce competitor of all time. Mike being first, and Marcus Smart 1A. I'm crazy about some Marcus Smart.
Okay,
but I love Drew Holiday too, so I gave you like 4 or 5 there.
Right.
All right. So anyway, all right. Number 2, got to go with Mike, but Kobe's right there. He always gets shorted
every time.
He should always be on the short list for the GOAT, and because Kobe. He put in the time. He put in the grind.
I don't understand
everything. But the only thing I've got against Kobe, I call him green light because he shot a little bit too much, especially late in his career. But to me, it didn't really hurt his legacy because he deserves every accolade and way more than he ever got. So I go Mike and Kobe right there. All right, 3. My 3 is I can't give you just one, man. How can you not say LeBron?
I gotta
if you call him
LeBron.
a 3. But then again, if Larry Bird wouldn't have had a bad back, you got to consider him, Larry. But I also put Charles Barkley right there. Barkley was unbelievable.
But most consider Barkley a 4.
Yeah, whatever.
Right. But okay, so let me ask you this about LeBron and Larry Bird. Just both of them healthy, full strength. Who do you take then? Just if both of them are healthy.
Because
you seen Larry Bird.
Depends on what else I can put around them. I wouldn't turn either one.
Just all time.
Both a key to the gym.
But just all time great. Like you just say the all time greatest player. Do you take Bird over LeBron or? You've seen both play. I haven't.
I haven't seen LeBron live, and I've only seen Bird in exhibition live, but I've seen both of them on TV tons.
Right.
They're just both of them are just so freaking great. It's unbelievable. I can't, man. You can't pin me on that one.
Okay.
You can't pin me on that. Right. Whoever gets the best night's sleep.
All right.
In their prime. All right, the 4. Most people say Timmy Duncan, and that is a great pick, right? But I promise you, and I've said this many times, even on live radio, on my show and others, I promise you, when he and Garnett faced up on each other, even though Duncan was great, Garnett got the better of him in playoffs or whatever. I don't know about every single game. So, and I call Garnett Crib because he's from right down the road. He's from Malden originally. So I'm going to go with Crib at my 4. I wish he'd clean up his mouth. I really do. And I hope he sees his podcast. Well, he could. If the Messiah got up in him, he would. All right? There you go.
Number 5.
No, and my 5, there's a lot of great ones, but first and foremost, you can have anybody else you want. Give me that big African, Hakeem Olajuwon. Hakeem. Look, Jabbar, a lot of people say he's the greatest basketball player ever, and that's a great pick. Shaq called himself MDE, the most dominant ever. He's got a great point.
It was.
Especially for his era. And how can you not mention Wilt? Because he's, right. A lot of people who are over, probably in the grave now, they tell you it ain't even close, that Wilt. And you look at the numbers, it wasn't even close. There's so many things that you have to factor in. He didn't do it he did it against some bigger centers than we give him credit for. There weren't as many people or teams in the league. Wilt was unbelievable. I only saw him briefly on TV. I can't even remember seeing the whole game, but as a kid, and he was unbelievable. Some of his feats were unbelievable. And he was an athletic freak at 7 feet. But I got to believe Olajuwon in his prime, I don't want nobody else. Hakeem.
So this is, when I talk about all-time great, it's hard for me to say because I didn't get a chance to watch all of these guys play. So when I do my all-time list, I just go by the players. I like to go by the players that I've watched play basketball.
Sure.
Because I was born in '92. So when Jordan retired, it was '98. So I was 6 years old, 98, 99, whatever. So I was 6, 7 years old. So I didn't get a chance to really watch and analyze and see him play like that. So when I do mine, I just go by the greatest players that I've just had a chance to watch play. So number 1 for me, I say Kobe. It was the best player that I've ever seen play basketball.
Okay.
Then I go number 2, I'll go LeBron. 3 goes back and forth for me. I say Steph or Tim Duncan at 3.
Okay.
I lean more towards Steph and then Tim, but it goes either way.
Okay.
You can put the other guy 4th. You can do Steph 4th or Tim Duncan 4th. And then 5, like you made me think about it. When you talk about Shaq, I would either put at 4 or at 5. I would either go Shaq or Dwayne Wade. One of those two.
Okay.
That would be my top
too,
5. Yeah, Wade. Yeah, Wade had a dog in him, man.
Yeah.
So, but Shaq was just. It's hard to say because Shaq was just dominant. That Lakers stretch that he had, like nobody could do anything with him.
Yeah, no doubt.
But at 5, I would say one of those guys. 3, 4, I probably gave you about 6 names, 5, 6 names right there with Tim Duncan and Steph at 3. I'll probably say, man, that's hard.
It is.
With Steph and Duncan, I think I would probably go Steph number 3 just because of the way he just changed the game. And it's
He's
something.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
he's Steph guy too, man.
So I'll probably go Steph 3. I'll go Tim Duncan 4, even though they can go either way.
Yep.
And then at 5, either Shaq or Dwayne Wade. I'll probably give it to Shaq just because of how dominant he was in that stretch.
Can't go wrong
MVP, four titles. So I'll probably go Shaq at 5. But that'll be like the 5 greatest, and then Wade right there at 5, 8. Yeah, right there.
D-Wade.
Yeah. Give me one off-season prediction, as far as like trades in the off-season or free agency. Like, give me one prediction you will have for like what's going to happen in the off-season.
Victor Wembanyama to Charlotte for their entire team, half the city, and all the raceway. How about that?
And they still won't take him.
No, then me and you go up, start at the 1 and the 2.
Sign me up.
With Victor, and then we grab 2 longs and we roll. That's it.
I wish Charlotte had that number 1 pick.
Oh, it was so close.
I mean, yeah, it was
so
close. But like I said, I always felt just like the Spurs were just going to definitely get that number 1 pick. I'll give you this real quick, though. My offseason prediction.
Yep.
Damian Lillard
goes to the Celtics.
The Suns.
To
Phoenix
the Suns.
I think
replacing
Chris Paul. I think you move DeAndre Ayton, Chris Paul for Dame and Nurkic. They might want more than that. I don't know. I know they gave their picks to Brooklyn for KD.
Yep.
Maybe you try to get some kind of picks or you throw in campaign or something else. But I think Damian Lillard goes on the move this offseason. If I had to predict that, I'd say Damian Lillard goes to Phoenix. Even though they might not want to trade him in the West, I think just because Dame's been so loyal, they want to give him an opportunity to win. I think if he goes there, they got like a 2-year window where they have a real chance to win the championship.
I like that.
So you move Nurkic and Dame for CP3 and DeAndre Ayton. And CP3 is one of those guys who can help you develop some of those younger guys. Portland has the number 3 pick in the draft. Maybe you trade that and bring somebody else in or draft somebody he can work with. Maybe Brandon Miller from Alabama. I did like him. Mm-hmm. But I think Damian Lillard, just my prediction, I don't know. If he is on the move, I'm gonna say Damian Lillard goes to Phoenix Suns, and he pairs up with KD and Book. But
I'm gonna counter that.
Okay.
Dame to the Lakers. How about that?
Dame to the Lakers.
Wouldn't that be nice? You got to give up some stuff.
They're gonna have to give up some stuff. Yeah, go give up some stuff. But that's possible too.
Yeah, we'll see.
You know what?
It's always interesting.
Maybe I'm just throwing this out there. Maybe you trade CP3 out there to Portland. They buy him out, and then some kind of way he lands in, like we were talking about Boston earlier. Maybe he lands in Boston and on a minimum deal or something for another chance to win. Because I don't think he would want to stay in Portland because he won't win there. But maybe you buy him out. He lands in Boston with Jaylen Brown and Tatum. That's something else. I'm just throwing it out there.
I love CP3, and I'm not being disrespectful.
He just stays hurt, though.
Well, the thing about it is he needs to be up there with Barkley and them doing that show. He needs to retire.
You think so?
Yeah.
I think it's a lot.
There's no shame in not having won a championship. He tried. He just couldn't stay away from
injury. I think he still has
like
2 years left on his deal. It's going to be hard to walk away from that type of money, though.
Yeah.
So
maybe so.
So maybe we don't know. This is just something we're just throwing out there.
He's into Twilight.
Yep.
Yep.
So, KB, before we get out of here, man, I want to thank you for your time.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
I love asking everybody at the end, though, on the Cross the Line podcast, when I travel, we love asking entrepreneurs, and people from all different backgrounds, what does self-investment mean to you?
Self-investment.
Mm-hmm.
It means I follow the will of God from my life. How about that?
Perfect.
I'll end it like that.
Absolutely. KB, thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
Can you tell everybody how to find you again and find your radio show?
Yep. I don't do any social media. I'm the
you gotta get
old
on.
relic. I'm the old relic.
They've
tried for years, but anyway, if you're outside the Spartanburg area, go to SpartanburgSportsRadio.com. I have a show on Monday night that I host with a young gentleman who's 25 years old named Josh Tate. We call him Batman on the show, and he's doing a great job. We're on every Monday night at 6 o'clock. Most Monday nights we have a 2-hour show. Sometimes it gets cut short to 1 hour. I also appear on that same station on Friday mornings from 8 till 9 on Bump and Run with Tyler Sugar. It's basically how you can catch me.
All right, KB, thank you again for your time. You're more than welcome to come back again. We'll definitely talk some more hoops and talk some more sport. So hopefully everyone enjoyed this episode of the Cross the Line podcast. Till next time, keep chasing your dreams. Thank you for listening.
Hey, I'm Ken Blankenship. You can catch me on Fox Sports Spartanburg on a show called Double Dribble, Monday nights at 6 o'clock. You're listening to Cross the Line podcast.